All right, hey folks. So I was due to do another React video, and here we go. Unfortunate incident for Conor McGregor last night. So let's take a look at that and then look at the implications for what it means to him and why this might have happened. So let's check it out. Let's go straight to the video. So this was happening just like a little bit before the breakage. To say that McGregor was in the lead prior to the stoppage is probably not accurate. And I know there's probably going to be some hardcore McGregor fans disagree with me, but he wasn't doing well before, and there's the breakage. Now, I don't know why, like at that stage, why the referee just didn't stop the fight. I mean, surely you're looking at it and surely you see exactly what happened. So you kind of like let it crack on for a few seconds at least. I don't know. Maybe someone wants to educate me on why that is, but that was quite clearly like a fairly major accident. You could see his broken, like part of his, where the break was just above that, actually went and dipped onto the ground. You see that there? I mean, that was absolutely clear. Snaps it and then goes and basically steps on his broken bone. Horrific. The pain he must have been in. Absolutely horrible. Let's just go ahead and watch that again. All right. Well, absolutely horrific accident. So let's see if there's a bit on the post-fight interview, because I think there was a little bit. He speaks on a little bit. I'm not sure if there's much here in this particular video. All right. So anyway, yeah. So I wanted to talk a bit about like why this happens. So firstly, the breakage is absolutely horrific. Poirier, I think that's how you pronounce it, said that he checked one of Conor's shin kicks, and that's what then weakened his leg, which led to the breakage. Conor denies that. He immediately denied that. He just said, look, it's one of those things that happen. It's a bit like the Anderson Silva thing. What I will say is there's a relatively high risk of injury when it comes to sports like MMA compared to and contact sports in general. You're looking at things like rugby or American football. Relative to things like gym injuries, there's a much higher prevalence of injuries where there's a dynamic open chain part of the sport. So like you've got a foot which is randomly coming down onto the floor. It's very different to squatting in a squat rack where the strength of the force is very much controlled and the direction of the force is very much controlled. In rugby, American football, MMA, it's all very dynamic, and that can lead to a lot of varying stresses on the body. So not only is the actual fight dynamic, makes it a very, very dangerous sport, makes you very prone to injuries, but also the way that your body and your ground and your joint interact with the ground and interact with the other players and fighters, in this instance, makes it a much more dangerous thing to do than just lift weights. Like lift weights is basically compared to like wrestling with somebody, weights want to be lifted, right? They're very much able to be controlled. Whereas if you're fighting someone else in the ring, it's a very different dynamic. So that's the first thing. You've got strikes, you've got people checking the strikes, and you've got the bones hitting the ground at different angles and in different positions. That in and of itself, and sort of very random positions, that in and of itself is far more stressful and more likely to lead to injuries. The other thing is, there's a couple of more things that I wanted to touch on, which I don't think many people are talking about. But one is just the general bone loss from nutritional stuff that these guys put themselves through. So Conor fights at 155. It's like 70 kilos. Now, his regular kind of height is like 5'9", 5'10". That's not a lot of weight for someone. That is very lean. So if he's fighting even a couple of times a year and he's getting into shape and he's training, he's going to have to be really restricting himself to get down to that sort of weight and probably letting himself like relax a little bit. Even up to 170 would be fine. It could still be a very lean 170. And I imagine we've probably seen him in interviews heavier than that as well. But he fights at 155, which is really light. Now, in terms of what I've seen, I mean, I've talked about some of the nutritional practices of footballers and CrossFitters and hockey players and boxers with a lot of money on the line are pretty horrific. So I'm not so sure I'm massively confident that his nutrition is going to be right on top of things to ensure he's not losing bone density via cuts that he's having to do to get down to weight. Okay, so there's that. That's one thing I'm not massively sure of. And I think just the stress on the body of having to dip down to 155 potentially multiple times per year is going to be quite extreme, and that in itself is going to cause some bone loss. Next thing, I went and had a look and tried to find something about McGregor's training, and I couldn't really see anything regarding actual resistance training. So the majority of his training seemed to be MMA style training, and I'm sure it's very good for that. Obviously, he's a world-class athlete in MMA, and that's great, but I didn't see any weight-bearing resistance exercises in his routine whatsoever, at least for the stuff that I could find on the internet. And I would just think, just for the purpose of bone density, because these types of injuries are relatively prevalent in MMA, like with Anderson Silva, and I'll touch on him in a moment. You'd think like throwing in some leg presses or some squats, heavy and progressive, even if it's every couple of weeks, like just do something so that, you know, maybe once a week, a couple of times a month, you're at least getting some bone density, some strengthening, some reason for your body to start to uptake that calcium and really solidify those bones, because you are doing so many stressful weight cuts like multiple times per year. Like, one would think that's a good idea, and I don't know, perhaps I'm just missing that from his training. Perhaps he does do some heavy squats every once in a while, some heavy leg presses. One would think that strengthening the bones would be a priority, considering he's literally in the ring where the objective of the other guy is to get him to tap out or to knock him out, and one of the means of doing that would be to break his bones, like arm bars, leg locks, you know, ankle locks, all that kind of stuff. One would think that's a good idea. I mean, I don't know. Potentially he does do stuff like that. I don't know. But as I say, I'm not massively impressed with the level of training that some of these sports put their athletes through. I touched on that in a video recently where I was talking about boxers and punching with dumbbells and stupid stuff like that I see. So one would suggest, think that maybe, you know, do at least some squats, just literally for the bone strengthening, maybe once or twice a month, or a couple of times a month, or even once a week, you know, depending on what you can fit in. The next thing is hormone use. Now, Conor hit 32, so that's not old, of course, but certainly it's at the stage where hormone levels are starting to slow down. Now, I'm not going to speak about Conor because I don't want to accuse him of doing anything, but like let's look at Anderson Silva. Anderson Silva is also a very high-profile case of somebody who broke his leg in the same, by the looks of it, the same type of injury. It was a tibia-fibia kind of injury, a shin injury, basically. But broke it in similar ways. He broke it on the actual attack rather than landing on it, but basically it's the same type of injury. Anderson Silva, and this is public knowledge now, he's no stranger to hormone use. No stranger to hormone use, a great way of putting it. Basically, he's been busted for using anabolics at least once that I know of. And part of what, well, without getting too deep into the woods, one of the things that is, there's two mechanisms by which that might be problematic. Okay, the first one is the anabolics themselves. Now, it's not necessarily confirmed, like I'm not sure there's studies on this or what the dynamic is, but there does seem to be a higher prevalence of at least ligament injuries, and I'm not sure how that translates to bone, with people that are using hormones. That people often say it's a direct weakening effect, but that's on the ligaments, not so much on the bones. Again, I don't know the interactions there. Other people say the muscles grow too strong too fast, so then the joints and whatever can't keep up. I don't know. But what I do know is definitely that, and I've looked into this, that for those who use drugs which are potentially which lower estrogen, that might have a weakening of bone density. So we know that women tend to have a higher levels of osteoporosis, higher incidence of osteoporosis, because estrogen levels fall when they're older. So they're in a state where their hormone levels are really poor, and that leads to bone loss. So osteoporosis, a lack of bone density, and that's directly via a lack of estrogen. And so for some of these guys, like Anderson Silva, what the thing he got busted for was something which sort of like I don't know the exact mechanics, but kind of like pushes down, kind of like suppresses estrogen. And so, not saying anything about McGregor, but potentially, let's say he's getting to the age where he's got a lot on the line. And the thing about McGregor is he's not really accepted at this stage that he's on the way down. Like you can see it in just the way he was speaking before the Poirier fight about, he said this is not over and all that kind of stuff. He's not. I remember when I retired from powerlifting, and I'm not trying to do any comparison between me and McGregor. He's a very different athlete, completely on a different level, right? But I remember when I finally retired from powerlifting, it took me a few goes to say, okay, you know what, I'm done. And I remember the specific session because I was with my powerlifting crew, and I was squatting and my knees hurt, and then I went to bench and my elbows hurt and my shoulders hurt, and this is all in one session. So, and I'd been struggling with it for a few weeks, and for a few years really. And it was in that session, and I turned around to my friend Mark, and I said to him, "Look, I'm done." And he said, "What do you mean?" Because we always did a squat, bench, and deadlift together. So we do, like, I was doing high bar squats on that day, and I was doing close grip bench, and I was going to be doing stiff leg deadlift. It was all written in, and we all did the lifts together. So we squatted first, benched afterwards, then deadlifted. And he knew I was struggling on squats. My knees were just killing me. I couldn't do anything. And this had been going on for weeks, and really the injuries had been piling up for years. And with my bench, I was trying to bench and my elbow was killing me, and it was in so much pain. And I remember thinking, like, I've just been in this amount of pain for so long. And I just said to him, "Look, Mark, I'm done. I'm off." And he goes, "What do you mean?" And I was like, "I packed my bag, so I'm off." And that's it. And I never trained with those guys again. But I knew when to hang it up. It took a while, but I knew when to hang up my heavy lifting days, right? I don't think Conor's there yet. And I'm not, and I worry that this injury is not going to be his realization that, okay, it's time to just go. I don't know. He might be at a point where he's on the decline. Now, when you're lifting in the gym and you're progressively warming up and lifting weights, it's a different matter. When you're in the ring with Poiriers and whoever else, like they're trying to hurt you, that's a very different dynamic, and you could really get hurt. And he just got really hurt. I worry because one, he might not know it's time to go if it is time to go. And the other thing is, he may somebody else in that position may well be tempted to use some assistance to help him extend his career. And if he's using the type of assistance that Anderson Silva was using, that may well contribute to bone density loss. And that's the problem. If he doesn't have someone in his corner who really knows what he's doing hormone-wise, that could be a problem. But again, not suggesting he's doing anything, but with Anderson Silva, it was very clear some of the stuff he was using was counterproductive towards bone density. And it looks like that cost him dearly. You look at a guy like LeBron. LeBron spends 1.5 million per year on his body. That's reportedly. And for anyone at that level, like your Ronaldos, your Leonardo da Messi's, all the really high-class athletes, like whoever they are, like it would be insane to think that there wasn't at least some hormonal supplementation at that level where there is so much money on the line and these athletes are getting older year by year. Why wouldn't you just extend your career slightly to use stuff like that? However, if he's getting bad advice, potentially using the stuff which is going to lead to bone density, and no one's really thinking about that because they're just thinking in the short 1 to 3 to 6 month window prior to a fight, then they may well be causing him some long-term damage, which may well have contributed to bone injuries. I don't know. Just talking in generalities, not saying anything particular about McGregor or any athlete, because I think that's bad form. I don't want to be accusing anyone of anything. I don't know. No one really knows what people are doing. But I'd say, that with fighters at that level, the combination of the type of sport that they're in, the fight dynamic, the fact that people are trying to hurt them, the open chain interaction with the ground and with other fighters, the huge weight cuts, and other potential stuff that they might be doing on the side to prolong their career, or at least to make them better at what they do, it could all lead to this type of scenario, which seems to be on the rise. In any case, that is my reaction to McGregor. Awful thing that's happened. I don't believe in kicking a guy when he's down. I wish him all the best. I hope he's back. I hope perhaps he considers maybe a career in boxing. That might be something which he's potentially more suited to now. I don't know, but I don't wish any harm on anyone. So I do hope a speedy recovery for him, because I think I just don't wish any harm on anyone in that situation. So I do hope for him all the best, and hope to see him up and walking around soon. All right, folks, I'll call it there. Take it easy.